Welcome back to another episode of Honest Reviews. Today we're going to be looking at the Mesmer John Bolino Pro Skate. For those of you that don't know, Mesmer is a joint venture between Billy O'Neill and Matthias Knoll from Powerslide. Basically, he contacted Matthias and said, I want to do something, I want to do a brand. What can we do with the throw-in shells? Is it still possible to use them? And Matthias said, you can use them, but I would like to work in a joint venture with you. So, if you've been skating for 10 or 15 years or more, you will remember this as the USD throw-in shell. It used to come originally with a tumor plate, and then later it came with two plates, and it's had various iterations like the UFS USD throw-in and other things, but this is the original. What they did is they filled in the back of the shell, put a different sole plate on it, and yeah, rebranded it as Mesmer. Not too dissimilar to basically what them did originally. They found an open mold that they could use, rebranded it, put their own sole plate on it, and then just developed the brand from there. So if that's the direction that Mesmer's planning on going as well, with using this as a starting off point and then developing other skates, then that's brilliant. I never really skated throw-ins. I had two pairs of them. I had a pair of the UFS Dustin Latimer ones, which were too big and I didn't really like them. And I had a pair of the size 9 Sean Kelso ones, the one with the blue cuff. And they were way too tight and just really painful, and I didn't get on with the sole plates at all. I think I skated maybe both skates in total for like 6 months max. So I didn't really go into this with being a huge fan of this skate, but I'm a really big fan of Billy O'Neill, and I'm an even bigger fan of John Bolino. I definitely think he deserves more than what he's got so far out of blading. So I was happy to support them. I got in contact with slicks.co.uk or .com, skate shop in London, and they very kindly sent me a pair to destroy and feedback on. Out of the box, as you can see, I've already put in an Intuition liner. I tried the stock liner, and there's a very helpful video online from Billy O'Neill about how to heat mold them, but they were so painful to put on that I couldn't even bring myself to heat mold them. Normally when it's stuff like that, it's usually they pinch or there's a pressure point or they're a little tight. These were so tight I couldn't even get my right foot in. I couldn't get the heel down. Now here's the liner here. It is actually really good quality. It's a MyFit liner. I'm not sure what type of MyFit, but it's quite beefy around the outside, and I really like the tongue design on it, but it's just too padded for the skate. There's nothing wrong with it. My foot's just really wide. For reference, I am a size 10 UK shoe, and I can normally fit into a size medium 909 them shell with Intuition V2 liners. So with these, yeah, it just didn't suit my foot at all, which is a shame because I do like them, and they come with a cool footbed that has artwork by Chase Rushing on it. But yeah, just couldn't get along with it. So put in the V2 liners, and I think it works really well. Like black and yellow aesthetic, relatively simple. First impressions of the skate, I thought it was brilliant. I really liked how the sole plate, I don't know if you can see, but if you look round, you can see the sole plate is actually really well fitted to the skate. There's no gaps anywhere, and it looks like it's custom made for it. Now, on Jan Welsh's Then and Now podcast, Billy O'Neill said that he got permission from Brian Shima to use the NIM sole plate. So when I first got these, I was under the impression that that's what they used, or that they'd modified a NIM sole plate so that it could fit on the throw-in. Turns out that was completely wrong. After the last video that I made, Mark Moreno got in touch with me, and he said that he'd actually designed a brand new sole plate for this skate. So what he did was he drew up the designs for the sole plate, and he took inspiration from the NIM sole plate and the Roce's Majestic 12 plate. He gave it to his friend who designed 3D models, and then they came up with it. If you look at the outside is a very similar shape to the NIM Soleplate, so that kind of makes sense that that's where he got the inspiration from. But if you look at the inside shape is very similar to the M12, it's just a little bit wider. So that basically explains the mystery of where the Soleplate comes from. It's not a pre-existing Soleplate, it's not off any other skate before, as some people have commented. It is completely new, and it was designed by Mark Moreno. And Mark Moreno just seems to be the driving force behind this brand, because he's responsible for a lot of the imagery, a lot of the marketing, and the incredible video Mesmer Rising. So they have got a golden goose. They really need to keep hold of him, as well as being a brilliant skater. Out of the box, I love the way they look. It's got a very simple, clean aesthetic, which I did always like about the Thrones. If you look at them from the top down, because it's got a really open shell here and the lacing's really open, it gives the impression that it's really quite wide, which is what I thought when I got them. But as soon as I put my foot in, I realized that because the outside of the skate is perfectly like straight, it basically means it doesn't curve out in any way, so there's not a lot of room. And also the skate itself is quite low at the top, it doesn't come out quite high, so there's not a lot of space. But with the V2 Intuition, I can just get my size 10 UK feet inside a size 9 UK shell. But if you are thinking of downsizing these, it really depends on your foot shape. I've got a really wide foot, really flat foot, and I do find kind of pressure points here and here. Not so much pressure points, but just a tightness. I'm very aware of the tightness there. But because of the open shell at the top, because it is so wide, there's a really good opportunity to break that in, or even just, you know, put some tennis balls in there and stretch it out a little bit with a hairdryer. But yeah, just wait and see how it goes. Other than that, I really like the wheel setup that it comes with. It comes with 60mm flat, so it's 90A on the outside, 95A on the inside, and it comes with, I believe these are the Fluid 5 frames. So that's one of the first things that I'm not that keen on. I don't really like the shape of the Fluid 5 frame. I don't like that it's got a narrow H block, but also quite a deep H block. And looking at it, I also feel like the frame is slightly too short for the skate. Just when you look down, I don't know, it seems like it's not long enough, but I could be wrong. And there's something else. Oh yeah, the lacing system. So I really like to tie my skates up as tight as possible. I like to have them wrapped all the way around my foot and my ankle and, you know, the bottom of my shin. And with these, you can't really do that as much, because the lacing system only comes up to a certain point in the boot. There is space to put another lace hole up there, so I would have preferred it if it had that option, but you can still get them on pretty tight. And yeah, the main takeaways are, I like the generous sole space, because going from the Them 909, I'm using the old 909 sole plate, and it doesn't really have much negative space. In fact, I pretty much lost negative grinds, and the sole space isn't that generous, whereas on these it very much is. So I've already kind of given these a roll around. I've had a quick shot at a park. I normally skate products that I'm going to test on honest reviews for a month. I normally skate them in street, park, basically everything I can to try and get a good impression of how long they last, just, you know, like any kind of niggling problems that present themselves after a certain amount of use. The weather in Scotland right now is truly awful. It is absolutely terrible. It's either wet every day or raining every day or windy. So I'm just going to do a few skate park sessions in these, like a couple of skate park sessions. And, you know, there's only so many times you can skate a park with the same setup before it becomes quite arbitrary and there's not any more you're going to learn about the product. So, going to give these a blast and I'll let you know what I think. And we're back. I have been skating the Mesmer John Bolino skate for a couple of sessions now, as you can probably see, because they're quite marked up. Starting to lose the graphic on the bottom. Well, not lose it, I'm just starting to put wax marks on top of it. I have skated these at a couple of indoor parks, Loading Bay in Glasgow and Unit 23 in Dumbarton, and initial impressions are really good. The first thing I was really surprised about is the quality of the wheels. Now, I normally would never get a full setup. I would normally just buy boot only and put my own frames and wheels on them, because more often than not, stock frames and wheels just aren't that great on, and that goes for most brands across the board. With these wheels, I was quite surprised by, they're nice and fast, but they're also grippy, like you don't slide out on them. I really enjoyed skating these. They had a really nice, smooth ride. You can tell that they're good quality wheels. Also, on the inside, because it's 95A, I think I maybe had wheel bite like 3 or 4 times max, and that was just down to poor technique. I was just leaning over the ledge too much on angle iron ledges. Another thing I was pleasantly surprised with was the frames. Now, I don't like the look of the frame. I do think I still maintain that it's too short for the boot, and I wasn't really a fan of how the H-block looks, but skating it, there was zero break-in time at all. Like pretty much as soon as I started skating these, I was doing Royales and Unities and Farbs, and it just felt absolutely fine. So maybe there is something to be said for a narrow, slightly deep groove. The main takeaway I had from this skate was the sole plates are incredible. I cannot overstate how good these sole plates are. They were so fast and they locked in really well. Before I'd skated these, I've been skating a couple of different versions of the Them 909, and before that I skated the Rossi's Fifth Element. This sole plate is way faster than both of those. The first time I locked onto a practice rail on these, I flew to the end of it and I couldn't believe it. It felt really, sole-based tricks on these feel really satisfying. I also got negatives back. I did a bunch of like negative Mistrals and negative acids on just like angle iron, and didn't come off once. Like they just feel, once your like negative plate is locked in there, it is locked in. So props to Mark Moreno and his friend for designing these, because they did a really good job. I think people are going to love these sole plates. The boot felt like, I did say that I did feel like it was too narrow for my foot, and I still maintain that it is. I've got a really wide foot, incredibly long toes, and although my toes weren't like cramped at the front, like I couldn't even feel the front of the boot, both here and here it was quite painful after the first session, and on the second session it definitely was hurting after about an hour. So I'm gonna try and like stretch these out a little bit. I think if you just shove, a tennis ball inside, give it the old hairdryer treatment and leave it overnight, I think it could be helped. But that was one of the only that was like the main negative for me, just because I was really enjoying these skates, and weirdly I was doing tricks on them that I haven't done consistently in years. Like last night I started doing True Spin Porn Stars again. I can't remember the last time I've done those, and I did like 5 in a row, and I think it was just down to having a generous sole plate. Now, it's generous, but it's not ridiculous. Like there's other skates in the market that are like dinner plates, like the USD Shadow or the Gods carbon skates, which are just massive, ridiculous sole plates. No one needs a sole plate that big. Even if you're a beginner, you don't need a sole plate that big. This one is generous without, being outlandish. Another thing I liked about these is they have a very sensible heel pad. Now, if you look at that, this is basically the protector that comes underneath the liner to stop the bolts interfering with the liner. And it comes with an incredibly thin but hard MyFit heel pad. Now, I have a philosophy about heel pads. I think 90% of rollerbladers do not need heel pads. Like, I'm sorry, but as far as I'm concerned, if you're not Chris Haffey and you're not throwing yourself down El Toro, or you're not Stefan Brando and you're not jumping off roofs all the time, you do not need a massive heel pad. Most rollerbladers will skate ledges and the occasional handrail, maybe a moderate sized set of stairs. If you're skating handrails and you're coming off handrails and getting sore heels or bruised heels, that's down to poor technique. Having said that, if you are going to use a heel pad, that is a very sensible one to use, just because, yeah, it's nice and thin and hard. So those are great. On to the negatives. The first negative I noticed with this was, after skating these for 3 hours, at the start of the session, I tightened all the bolts everywhere. I tightened the buckle and the cuff. By the end of the session, all of them were so loose that you could literally turn it with your finger and take it out. Now, that has been a problem in the past with USD thrones, but it's also a problem with other skates. It happens in them skates as well. It's happened in other models that I've had. Basically, put some Loctite on them. The second session, skated for 3 hours again, no longer an issue. I went to check them all with an Allen key. They were all locked in there. So I'd recommend tightening them as soon as you get them and getting some Loctite. What other negatives did I notice about it? To be honest, I was actually a huge fan of the skate. The main thing that I just wasn't that keen on is just, yeah, the pain that I'm getting there. It's not even a pressure point, because it's not like it's a kind of design flaw or something that I can heat mold out of it. These liners are already as good as I'm going to get them. I've had them for like 2 years now and they're absolutely incredible. But yeah, they just need widened out a bit. What I would say is, fans of throw-ins or people who've skated throw-ins are going to love these, because it's just going to remind you of that. Fans of the SSM or the NIM Soleplate are going to love these, because you're going to get that feeling. Everyone else, if you haven't tried these before, if you've got a narrow foot, I would strongly recommend them. I think really love them. They're, you know, one of the skates I've preferred more than others in recent years. I would definitely say they're top 5 of the skates I've tried in recent years. But if you've got a wide foot, I would try a friend's on first, or get them from the shop and try them on in your house before skating on them. And if you've got a wide foot, you're definitely going to need a thinner liner. I do think when they went with the MyFit liner that they went with, they made a mistake. I think a more suitable liner for this would be the MyFit Second Skin. But this is literally the first model from the brand. They've got time to improve things. I genuinely believe they will. I think if people support this brand and allow them to make the developments and improvements that they need to, I think, you know, we're going to see some good things from Billy O'Neill and Mesmer and the guys. One other thing I did notice about these is, on both sessions, as soon as I put the skates on and close the buckle, I'd skate away and like put a little bit of flex onto the skate and the buckle would pop open. Now, I put them tighter and that didn't happen for the rest of the session, but it is something to look out for. However, buckles on skates aren't generally that good anyway, in my experience. It's very few skates that do have good buckles. Things like the Rossi's Fifth Element or the Rossi's M12, they've got good buckles. But things like them skates, they've got terrible buckles. I break them all the time and I don't think they're very well designed at all. In fact, them clearly don't think they're well designed either, because them have just designed a new buckle that's going to come in skates. So clearly they've had a lot of feedback about that. Overall, I do think people are really going to like these. There's a lot of positives. The negatives are generally down to the shape of your foot as opposed to any design flaws with the skate. So yeah, I'd recommend giving them a try. Now that you've heard me ramble on for way too long, enjoy some footage of me eating shit.
mm,